You know, there's a curious thing about people who begin to wake up, and I mean really wake up to the nature of existence. They often find themselves walking a rather solitary path, not because they're unfriendly, mind you, or because they've developed some sort of superiority complex. No, it's something much more mysterious than that. It's as if they've stepped through a doorway that most people haven't noticed is there, and once you've gone through, you can't quite squeeze back into the room you left behind. Now, let me tell you what I mean by this. Imagine for a moment that you've spent your entire life in a theater, watching a magnificent play. The drama is intense. There are heroes and villains, triumphs and tragedies, love stories and betrayals. Everyone around you is completely absorbed in it. They're gasping at the plot twists, weeping at the sad parts, cheering for their favorite characters. And you were too, for the longest time. You were right there with them, emotionally invested in every scene. But then one day, you happen to glance to the side and you notice something strange. You see the edge of the stage. You catch a glimpse of the curtain, the ropes, the pulleys. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that this is a performance. The actors are playing roles. The set is constructed. The whole thing, magnificent as it is a kind of elaborate game. Now, here's the thing. Once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. You might still enjoy the play. In fact, you might enjoy it even more, appreciating the artistry and skill involved, but you're no longer lost in it the way you once were. And when you turn to share this discovery with the people sitting next to you, you find that they're still completely absorbed. They don't want to look at the edge of the stage. They think you're ruining the show. This is the predicament of the spiritual person. They've glimpsed something about the nature of reality that fundamentally changes their relationship to everything. They've seen that what we call the world is in large part a construction, a web of concepts, beliefs, stories, and agreements that we've collectively decided to treat as absolutely real. And while these constructions serve a purpose, while they allow us to navigate life and communicate with each other, they're not the fundamental reality. They're not the territory. They're the map. And most people, you see, are so busy following the map that they've forgotten there ever was a territory. The spiritual person, and I use that term loosely because I'm not talking about someone who's necessarily religious or belongs to any particular tradition. The spiritual person has started to experience life directly rather than through the filter of all these concepts and stories. They've had moments, perhaps brief but unmistakable, where the constant chatter of the mind falls silent and there's just the raw, immediate, vibrant presence of existence itself. The birds singing, the breath moving, the extraordinary fact that anything exists at all. And here's where the loneliness comes in. When you try to talk about this with most people, you run into a peculiar problem. It's not that they're stupid or uninterested, it's that the very language we use to communicate is built on those shared concepts and stories. Words point to ideas, and ideas are abstractions. So when you try to describe a direct experience of reality, an experience that exists before and beyond concepts, you find yourself in the position of trying to use the map to describe the territory. It's a bit like trying to explain the taste of honey to someone who's never tasted anything sweet. You can use all sorts of poetic language, but ultimately they won't really know until they taste it themselves. So the spiritual person often feels like they're speaking a different language, even when they're using the same words as everyone else. When they say love, they might be pointing to something cosmic and impersonal, a fundamental connectedness of all things. When someone else hears love, they're thinking of a specific emotion tied to specific people under specific circumstances. Same word, entirely different reference. This creates a kind of isolation. Not a bitter, resentful isolation, though it can certainly feel that way sometimes, but rather a sense of being alone in a crowded room. You're surrounded by people, but there's a distance, a gap in understanding that's hard to bridge. And there's another aspect to this solitude, something perhaps even more fundamental. The spiritual awakening, if we can call it that, involves a dissolution of the very boundaries that we normally use to define ourselves. You begin to realize that the separate, isolated ego, the little me locked away inside your head, looking out at a world that's fundamentally other, is itself a kind of illusion, or at least it's not the whole story. You start to experience yourself as something much larger and more fluid than that. You're not in the universe like a marble in a bag. You're of it, continuous with it, a fleeting pattern in an infinite ocean. The wave realizes it's water. The dancer discovers she is the dance. Now, when you're having this kind of experience, or even just moving in that direction, the usual basis for human relationships starts to feel a bit odd. Most relationships you see are transactions between egos. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. We form alliances against the hostile universe. We seek validation, security, pleasure. We create identities, and then look for people who will confirm those identities for us. But if you're beginning to see through the ego game, if you're starting to recognize it as a kind of cosmic play rather than deadly serious business, you find it harder to participate in these transactions with the same earnestness. You're not better than others. That would be just another ego trip. But you're playing by different rules, or perhaps you've realized there were never any rules to begin with, just habits and agreements. This doesn't mean you become cold or detached. Quite the opposite, actually. You might find yourself capable of a much deeper kind of love, one that doesn't cling or demand or need anything in return. But this kind of love is puzzling to people who are used to the transactional variety. They don't quite know what to make of you. You're friendly, but you don't seem to need them in the way they expect to be needed. You're present, but somehow also absent. There, but not there. And so the spiritual person often walks alone, not because they've rejected others, but because they've stepped into a different mode of being, one that most of society isn't quite ready to recognize or accommodate. They haven't become hermits or misanthropes. They still engage with the world, still participate in the dance. But there's a quality to their engagement that's fundamentally different, and that difference creates a kind of necessary distance. Let me put it another way. Imagine you're at a party, and everyone is playing a game of Monopoly with tremendous intensity. Fortunes are being won and lost. There are alliances and betrayals. People are genuinely upset when they land on boardwalk with a hotel, genuinely thrilled when they pass go and collect their $200. The emotions are real. The involvement is total. Now suppose you're sitting there, and suddenly you remember, this is just a game. The money isn't real. The properties aren't real. In half an hour, we're all going to pack up the board and go home, and none of this will matter. That realization doesn't make you superior to the other players. It doesn't mean you can't continue to play, perhaps even with greater enjoyment, now that you're not taking it so seriously. But it does change your relationship to the game. You're playing, but you're not attached to the outcome in the same way. The other players, still deeply invested, might find your attitude disturbing. Why aren't you upset that you landed on boardwalk? Don't you care about winning? What's wrong with you? They might think you're not taking the game seriously, which from their perspective is a kind of betrayal. After all, the game only works if everyone agrees to treat it as important. Human society operates in much the same way. We have these collective agreements about what matters, what's valuable, what's worth pursuing. Money, status, success, approval, these are the monopoly money of human existence. They only have the value we collectively agree to give them. And most people are so deeply invested in accumulating this currency that they've forgotten it's, in a sense, arbitrary. The spiritual person has had a glimpse behind the curtain. They've seen that these things we're all chasing are empty in themselves, not worthless, mind you, but empty in the sense that they can't provide the lasting fulfillment we imagine they will. Real happiness, real peace doesn't come from accumulating the tokens. It comes from waking up to the game itself, from recognizing your true nature as the player rather than the piece on the board. But here's the tricky part. You can't really explain this to someone who's still fully invested in the game. And if you try, if you say things like money isn't real or your career doesn't ultimately matter, you sound either like a fool or like someone who's given up on life. You sound like a loser, someone who's trying to rationalize their failure to compete. So you learn gradually to keep these insights to yourself. You smile and nod when people talk about their ambitions and anxieties. You participate in the conversations, but there's a part of you that's standing back, watching, amused, and perhaps a little sad. This is one reason spiritual people walk alone. They're living in two worlds simultaneously. The world of conventional reality, where the game matters, and the deeper reality they've glimpsed, where the game is seen for what it is. They're bilingual in a sense, but most people only speak one language. There's also the matter of silence. The spiritual path, as it deepens, tends to move toward silence. Not the silence of having nothing to say, but the silence of recognizing that the deepest truths can't be said. They can only be lived, experienced, been. And in a culture that's absolutely mad with noise, with constant talking, constant thinking, constant stimulation, someone who values silence is going to feel out of step. Most human interaction, if you really look at it, is a way of avoiding silence, We chatter to fill the void, to distract ourselves from the great mystery that's always lurking just beneath the surface of our busy lives. We talk about the weather, about politics, about what we did last weekend, anything to avoid sitting with the raw, unmediated fact of existence. The spiritual person has begun to lose their fear of that silence, that void. In fact, they've discovered something extraordinary. The void isn't empty at all. It's full, overwhelmingly, impossibly full, but full of something that can't be captured in words or concepts. It's the fullness of pure being, pure awareness, the ground from which all experience arises. When you've tasted this, ordinary conversation starts to feel thin, somehow. Not unimportant, but thin, like eating cotton candy when you're hungry for bread. You still engage in it, of course. You still talk about the weather and current events, but you're aware of what's being avoided, what's being danced around. And sometimes you'd rather just sit in the silence with someone to share that deeper space. But most people find that terrifying. Why aren't you talking? Is something wrong? Are you angry with me? No, nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Actually, more right than it's ever been. But that rightness exists in the silence, not in the talking about it. And so the spiritual person finds themselves alone again. Not because they've chosen isolation, but because they've become comfortable with something most people are running from. Let me tell you something else. There's a kind of contentment that comes with spiritual understanding, a deep, unshakable okayness with life as it is. Not a passive acceptance born of resignation, but an active embrace born of insight. When you see that everything is unfolding exactly as it must, that the universe is playing itself out in the only way it can, there's a profound relaxation that occurs. The constant struggle against what is, the constant feeling that life should be different than it is, that drops away. Now, this might sound lovely, and in many ways it is, but here's the thing. This contentment, this okayness, makes you less useful to the machinery of society. Society, you see, runs on discontent. The entire economy is built on making people feel that they're not enough, that they need more, that they need to become something other than what they are. Advertising, social pressure, even much of education. It's all designed to create a sense of lack, because people who feel lacking will work themselves to death trying to fill that hole. But the spiritual person has discovered that the hole can't be filled from the outside, because it's not really a hole at all. It's the space in which everything appears. It's not something wrong that needs to be fixed. It's the very ground of being. When you realize this, you stop being driven in the same way. You don't need the new car, the bigger house, the impressive job title to feel complete. You already are complete. And this makes you weird. It makes you suspect. People think, what's wrong with them? Why aren't they ambitious? Why aren't they trying to get ahead? There's almost a moral judgment attached to it, as if contentment were a kind of laziness, a failure to participate properly in the great game of getting and spending. So the spiritual person walks alone because they've stopped playing by the rules that govern most human behavior. They're not seeking approval because they've realized that approval is just another empty currency. They're not building an identity because they've seen that all identities are provisional, constructed, ultimately false. They're not pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain with the same desperation because they've discovered a deeper dimension of existence that transcends the pleasure-pain duality. And yet, and this is crucial, they're not detached in the sense of being cold or indifferent. In fact, they may be more engaged with life, not less. When you're not constantly thinking about yourself, not constantly calculating how every situation affects your ego, you become available to reality in a much more immediate way. You see people more clearly. You hear the birds singing more fully. You taste your food with greater appreciation. Life becomes richer, not poorer. But this richness is internal. It doesn't translate easily into the external world of status and achievement. You might be experiencing profound joy while sitting on a park bench, watching the play of light through leaves. But to someone rushing past on their way to an important meeting, you just look like someone wasting time. And if you tried to explain what you're experiencing, they wouldn't understand. They might even feel a little threatened, because your apparent contentment with nothing challenges their assumption that happiness comes from something. There's also this to consider. Spiritual understanding often brings with it a kind of cosmic perspective that makes the usual human dramas seem, well, small, not unimportant. Human suffering is real and deserves compassion, but small in the sense of being temporary, localized, part of a much vaster pattern. Someone slights you at work. In the cosmic scheme of things, it barely registers. Your stock portfolio takes a hit. Galaxies are colliding in deep space, and somehow life goes on. This perspective doesn't make you callous, but it does give you a certain equanimity that others find baffling. They're caught up in the drama, and you're watching it unfold with interest, but without the same level of attachment. You care, but you don't mind in the same way. This cosmic perspective, this ability to zoom out and see the bigger picture, is another source of solitude. You're operating on a different scale than most people. While they're focused on the next 5 minutes, the next 5 years, you're holding those concerns within an awareness of eternity. And there's no easy way to communicate across that gap in scale. It's like trying to describe the ocean to someone who's never seen anything larger than a bathtub. But perhaps the deepest source of spiritual solitude is this: the realization that you were never not alone. That aloneness, all-one-ness, is the fundamental condition of existence. We imagine ourselves as separate beings who occasionally make contact with other separate beings, but that's backwards. The truth is that there's only one being, one consciousness, one awareness, experiencing itself through billions of eyes, thinking itself through billions of minds. When this understanding arises, and it's not really something you learn intellectually, but something you realize, in the sense of making real, the whole question of loneliness transforms. You see that you were never lonely in the first place, because there was never anyone to be lonely. There's just this, the eternal present, the infinite now consciousness being aware of itself. From this perspective, relationship takes on a different quality. You're not two separate people trying to bridge the gap between you. You're the universe recognizing itself, consciousness meeting consciousness, the one reality playing the game of two. There's intimacy in this profound intimacy, but it's not the clinging, needy intimacy of the ego. It's the intimacy of water meeting water, of space joining space. Most people haven't had this realization, so they're still operating from the model of fundamental separateness. They're trying to overcome their isolation through relationship, through connection, through love. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's beautiful, really, the way separate selves reach out to touch each other. But to someone who's seen through the illusion of separateness, these attempts have a quality of poignancy, like children playing at being grown up. You can't explain this without sounding either mystical or arrogant. And so again, you keep it to yourself. You engage in relationships perhaps with even greater depth than before. But there's a secret you're holding, a truth you've glimpsed that changes everything. And that secret, unshared and largely unshareable, creates a solitude at the very heart of your connections with others. Now, I don't want to paint too bleak a picture here. It's not all loneliness and isolation. There's a freedom in it, you see. When you're no longer dependent on others for your sense of self, when you're not looking to the world to validate your existence, you're free to meet people and situations without agenda. You can love without clinging. You can engage without attachment. You can participate fully in life while remaining utterly free. And occasionally, you meet someone else who's seen what you've seen. Someone who speaks the language of silence. Someone who understands that this right here, right now is it. There's no other moment to wait for, no other place to arrive at. And when you meet such a person, there's a recognition that goes beyond words. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to pretend. You can just be together in the mystery. Two waves acknowledging they're both made of the same ocean. These meetings are rare, but they're precious beyond measure. They remind you that you're not crazy, that what you've seen is real, that there are others who've walked this path. And then you part ways, because the path is solitary, not lonely, but solitary, and that's exactly as it should be.
You see, most people go through life under the strange illusion that other people make them angry, that the world out there with its noise and nonsense somehow creeps inside and shakes the calm from within. But that's rather like blaming the mirror for the expression on your face. The truth is, nobody can bother you. They can only touch the part of you that is already disturbed. And the more you try to fight it, the more entangled you become in the very net you're trying to escape. Peace doesn't come by stiffening against life, but by realizing there's no one to stiffen. The waves rise and fall, and the ocean never minds. In the same way, anger, irritation, frustration. They come and go, but they are not you. To be unbothered is not to build a wall around yourself, but to see that there was never a separate self to defend in the first place. You see, when something happens, a disrespecting word, a sudden disappointment, a rude interruption, there's a tiny instant before you react. Most people never notice it. They leap from stimulus to response like a spark from flint, and then wonder why they feel burned. But in that small space, that fraction of a moment before the mind begins to chatter, lies your freedom. That's the gap where life gives you the chance to wake up instead of merely react. The event itself is neutral. It has no meaning until you give it one. When someone calls you a fool, the insult only works if you believe in the fool they're talking to. If you don't, the words just vanish into thin air. So the game is not about controlling what happens, because that's impossible. It's about watching what happens within you and realizing, I don't have to pick that thought up. Anger only asks one thing of you, participation. The moment you stop playing, it dies of neglect. To react less is not weakness. It's the highest form of intelligence. It means you've remembered that you were never the puppet. One of the great sources of human misery is the quiet expectation that other people should know better. We spend an extraordinary amount of time waiting for the world to behave sensibly, as if everyone else secretly agreed to follow our rulebook. But of course they didn't. They never signed your invisible contract. They're simply playing their own game, completely unaware that you expected them to dance to yours. And when they don't, when they lie, forget, interrupt, disappoint, we feel offended, as though the universe itself has made some terrible mistake. Yet it hasn't. That's just the mind insisting they shouldn't be like that. But they are. Expecting people to act like you is like expecting the cat to bark because you're in the mood for a dog. When you give up demanding harmony from the world, you begin to laugh at how seriously you once took everyone else's behavior. And laughter, you see, is the sound of freedom returning. Once you stop expecting people to behave like you, another realization quietly dawns. You also stop needing them to agree with you. Because disagreement, you see, is just diversity in disguise. The same life that makes trees grow crooked makes minds grow in different directions. It's rather silly to demand that everyone see through your eyes when their windows open onto entirely different skies. And that's where most of our suffering begins. Not in what people do, but in our desperate urge to make them see it our way. So before we can ever find peace with others, we must loosen our grip on this idea of being right, this little badge we polish and wear upon the chest of me. We are terribly concerned, you know, with being right. It's one of our favorite addictions, the sweet intoxication of certainty. We argue, we defend, all to protect this fragile little castle called my opinion. But what if being right isn't the point at all? What if life isn't a debate to be won, but a dance to be enjoyed? Because notice, every time you must be right, someone else must be wrong. And so the world divides itself neatly into enemies and fools, all invented by your need to feel secure. The truth doesn't belong to anyone. It plays hide and seek through all of us. And the moment you stop chasing it, it comes and sits quietly beside you. When you drop the obsession with being right, you begin to listen, not to prepare a counter-argument, but to truly hear. You find that peace isn't born from victory. It comes when there's no longer anything to defend. So let others cling to their certainties. Let them win, because the one who no longer needs to win has already found the only thing worth keeping. It's peace. And when you no longer need to be right, you'll notice something quite extraordinary. Other people's opinions begin to lose their gravity. For so long, our sense of being right was tied to our sense of being somebody. And when that somebody feels threatened, even the gentlest disagreement sounds like thunder. But once you stop defending an image of yourself, the thunder becomes only noise, and the sky remains perfectly clear. You realize that what people say about you is simply an echo of their own mind, a reflection bouncing off their own glass. If you mistake that reflection for your face, you will spend your life trying to polish someone else's mirror. It's rather curious how much power we give to sound. Someone utters a few vibrations through the air, a sentence, a label, a careless remark, and suddenly your entire sense of self begins to tremble. You take their words, wear them like tattoos, and then wonder why you feel marked. But tell me, what exactly is being wounded? The sound passes, the air settles, and all that remains is your idea of what it meant. You see, the insult doesn't live in their mouth. It lives in your memory. When someone says you're foolish, that statement doesn't describe you. It describes their vision, their mood, their moment. Why let their passing weather become your climate? To depend on another's praise or blame is to hang your heart on a wind chime. Every breeze becomes a storm. Freedom begins when you realize that nothing anyone says about you has anything to do with who you actually are. Because who you are is not an opinion. It's the silence before every word. And silence, thank God, cannot be offended. Now, this doesn't mean you must let everyone trample through your garden while you sit smiling in eternal bliss. No, no. Love without intelligence becomes sentimentality, and peace without clarity becomes passivity. You see, protecting your energy isn't about building walls. It's about knowing where your garden ends and the wild forest begins. You can welcome visitors, but you needn't let them pitch a tent on your soul. Most people confuse kindness with compliance. They think to be spiritual is to say yes to everything, to be endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly exhausted. But even the sun sets, and even the ocean withdraws from the shore. Boundaries are not barriers. They are expressions of balance. When you say no, you're not rejecting the other. You're honoring the rhythm of your own being. Because if you give when you're empty, you offer not love, but resentment dressed as virtue. It's a funny thing. When you finally stop overextending yourself, you discover that life doesn't fall apart. It simply rearranges itself around your peace. And peace, unlike exhaustion, doesn't need to be earned. So, protect your energy not by closing the heart, but by staying rooted in yourself, like a tree that bends with the wind but never forgets where it stands. When you no longer feel the need to defend an image, you find that silence begins to speak for you. It's not the silence of avoidance or repression. It's the silence that comes when there's simply nothing left to say. Most people imagine strength as volume, as assertion, as a firm voice that must be heard. But real strength often sounds like nothing at all, because truth doesn't argue, it just is. When someone throws anger at you, what happens if you don't throw it back? It falls to the ground like a stone that has lost its target. And in that quiet, something extraordinary occurs. Their fury begins to echo only in their own mind, while yours remains still. like a pond untouched by the wind. You see, silence is not a retreat. It's a refusal to participate in madness. It's not submission. It's sovereignty. It's saying without words, I will not be drafted into your war. When you stop reacting, the world reveals its true pace. Slow, rhythmic, almost musical. You find that you don't have to win arguments or prove points. You simply have to be still enough to hear life humming beneath the noise. And that hum, that quiet background of existence, is what people spend lifetimes chasing without realizing it has been humming through them all along. When you no longer rush to defend or explain, you begin to see something very curious about other people. They are mirrors, not obstacles. Every irritation, every insult, every criticism, it's life holding up a reflection of your own unfinished business. That's why certain remarks sting, while others pass like wind. The sting only finds what's already tender. So rather than blaming the messenger, look at what they've touched. You may find that the world isn't against you at all. It's simply showing you where you still hold resistance. The people who bother you the most are often your best teachers in disguise. They reveal the exact place where you're not yet free. And once you see this, you stop taking things so personally. The moment someone tries to provoke you, you almost want to thank them. Not because you enjoy the jab, but because they've helped you spot another knot you can now untie. That's the secret. People lose their power to bother you. The instant you realize they were never enemies, only mirrors polishing you back to clarity. And once you begin to see others as mirrors, something softer begins to unfold. You stop needing the reflection altogether. You no longer cling to the role of the one who must learn, or the one who must be calm, or even the one who must not be bothered, because all of those are still little masks, still the self trying to fix itself. Letting go isn't something you do. It's what happens when you stop holding on. Just as the hand releases a stone when it grows tired of grasping, the heart releases its burdens when it grows tired of pretending to control. You see, anger, resentment, and hurt, they're just the mind's way of saying, I haven't yet accepted what already is. But when you finally see the futility of resistance, when you stop demanding life to be polite, it becomes beautifully simple. People say what they say. The world moves as it moves. And you remain undisturbed, like the sky behind all weather. To let go is not to forget, nor to forgive in any official sense. It's to wake up and realize there's nothing to forgive because there was never anyone separate to offend. The play goes on, the actors shout their lines, and you, at last, can sit in the audience, smiling, knowing it was all theater from the beginning. And in that smile, you discover the secret you were chasing all along. Nothing and no one can bother you. When you've stopped mistaking the play for real life, you threw yourself into these games with complete conviction. You were absolutely the cowboy, totally the mother serving imaginatively cookers. But you never forgot, not really, that it was play. The moment your mother called you for dinner, you dropped the role without a second thought. You didn't cling to being the cowboy. You didn't suffer an identity crisis when the game ended. But somewhere along the way, we forgot how to play. We became what I call method actors in the theater of life. We got so absorbed in our roles that we forgot we were acting. We started believing that we really are the banker, the housewife, the success, the failure. And when you forget you're playing a role, the game becomes a prison. Now, when I say life is a game, I don't mean it's trivial or meaningless. Games can be incredibly important. He plays with intensity, with passion, with everything he's got. But he maintains what we might call a light touch. The first rule of this cosmic game is perhaps the most startling. You are not who you think you are. The person you call by your name, with your particular history, your specific worries and dreams, that's just your character in the game. It's a mask, a role you're playing so convincingly that you fooled even yourself. But who is the real you? Ah, that's where it gets interesting. The real you is the player, not the character. You are the awareness that can observe thoughts, feelings, sensations. You are the space in which all experiences arise and dissolve. You are, if you will, the stage on which the entire drama unfolds. Once you see this, really see it, the game changes completely. You realize you've been like an actor who got so lost in his role that he forgot he could take off the costume and go home. Suddenly you remember, you are not trapped in the character. You can play it skillfully, enjoy it thoroughly, but you don't have to be imprisoned by it. Here's another rule that most players miss entirely. The game has no final winning condition. There is no ultimate prize, no finish line where you can finally declare victory and retire. The whole point of the game is the playing itself. We've been taught to think of life as a journey, with a destination. But it's much more like music or dancing. You don't dance to get to a particular spot on the floor. You don't listen to a symphony to get to the final note. The meaning is in the movement, in the flowing, in the playing. But we've turned life into a race. We rush through childhood to get to adulthood. We hurry through school to get to our careers. We work frantically to reach retirement. And then we sit in our rocking chairs, wondering where it all went. We were so busy trying to get somewhere else that we missed the only place we ever actually were, which is here, now, in this moment. The game is always happening now. Not tomorrow when you'll be happier, not yesterday when things were better, but right now. This is the only time the game is actually being played. Yet most of us are like people at a concert who spend the entire performance reading the program notes, trying to figure out what's coming next instead of listening to the music that's playing right now. Another fascinating aspect of this game is that it's completely rigged in your favor. How's that? Well, no matter what happens to you, no matter what role you find yourself playing, you can't actually lose, because you are not just your character. You are the entire game itself. Think of it this way. In a dream, you might be chased by a monster, and it feels terrifying. But when you wake up, you realize you were both the one being chased and the monster doing the chasing. You were the entire dream. In the same way, you are not just one player in the cosmic game. You are the game playing itself. This might sound like mystical nonsense, but consider this. Every person who irritates you, every situation that challenges you, they're all part of your experience. They exist in your awareness. In a very real sense, the entire universe as you know it is happening inside your consciousness. You are not a small separate being struggling in a hostile world. You are the world, looking at itself through the eyes of what you call you. Once you get this joke, and it is a cosmic joke of the highest order, your whole approach to living changes. You stop taking everything so personally. When someone criticizes you, instead of getting defensive, you might think, here's the universe playing the role of the critic. How interesting. What can I learn from this performance? When you're facing a difficult situation, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You might ask, why am I happening to this? Because if you are the entire game, then you are not the victim of circumstances. You are circumstances, appearing to yourself as challenges to make the game interesting. Now let me address something important. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. Far from it. When you know you're playing a game, you can play it with tremendous skill and enthusiasm. You can care deeply about your moves while not being devastated if they don't work out perfectly. You can love fully while not being destroyed if that love isn't returned. You can work passionately while not being crushed if your efforts don't immediately succeed. The secret is what I call playing with a light touch. It's like being a great jazz musician. You know the basic structure of the song, but you're always ready to improvise. You respond to what the other musicians are doing. You don't try to force the music into some predetermined pattern. You flow with it, play with it, dance with it. Most people approach life like they're playing classical music with a very strict conductor. Every note must be exactly as written. There's no room for spontaneity, no space for creativity. But life is much more like jazz. The basic rhythm is there, but within that rhythm, infinite possibilities exist for improvisation and play. Here's one of the most liberating rules of the game. You don't have to be consistent. You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. The character you've been playing, with all its limitations and problems, is not a permanent fixture. It's more like clothing you can change. We spend so much energy defending our self-image, protecting our reputation, maintaining our personality. But what if you could be anyone you choose to be in each moment? What if instead of being trapped by your past, you could reinvent yourself constantly? Not in a crazy, unstable way, but in a fluid, creative way that allows you to respond freshly to each situation. Children do this naturally. One moment they're a princess, the next they're a dragon, then they're a race car driver. They don't worry about consistency. They don't think, but wait, yesterday I was a princess, so I can't be a dragon today. And here's the beautiful thing. Every person you meet is you, wearing a different mask, playing a different role. That annoying colleague, that difficult relative, that stranger on the street who smiled at you, they're all you, exploring what it's like to be different characters in the great drama. When you see this, compassion arises naturally. Not the condescending kind of compassion that looks down on others, but the recognition that you're all in this together, all playing parts in the same cosmic theater. This doesn't mean everyone is the same on the surface level. Obviously, people have different personalities, different backgrounds, different ways of playing their roles. But at the deepest level, the awareness looking out through their eyes is the same awareness looking out through yours. We're all windows in the same house, each with a different view, but all part of the same structure. Now, let's talk about one of the trickiest aspects of the game. The part most people find hardest to master. How do you deal with suffering? How do you play skillfully when the game seems to turn against you? When you're dealt what appears to be a losing hand? The first thing to understand is that suffering is not the same as pain. Pain is natural, inevitable. If you stub your toe, it hurts. If someone you love dies, you grieve. These are simply part of the human experience, part of what makes the game interesting and complete. But suffering, that's different. Suffering is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It's the resistance to what's happening, the demand that life be different than it is. Pain says, this hurts. Suffering says, this shouldn't be happening. It's unfair. It means something terrible about me or my future. When you understand this distinction, you can learn to experience pain without adding the extra layer of suffering. You can feel sadness without the story that you should be happy. You can face challenges without the narrative that you're a victim. You can encounter setbacks without the drama that your life is ruined. Think of it like weather. Sometimes it rains, sometimes it shines. The sky doesn't resist the rain or cling to the sunshine. It simply allows whatever weather is happening to happen. You can approach your inner weather the same way. Sometimes you'll feel joyful, sometimes sad, sometimes confused, sometimes clear.
None of these states are permanent. They're all just part of the changing weather of consciousness. Here's another game rule that can save you enormous amounts of energy. You don't have to have an opinion about everything. You don't have to judge every experience as good or bad, right or wrong. Sometimes you can simply say, how interesting, and leave it at that. We've been trained to constantly evaluate, to always be deciding whether we like or dislike what's happening. But this constant judging is exhausting. It's like being a critic who can't simply enjoy a movie because they're too busy analyzing every scene. Sometimes you can just watch, just experience, just be present, without needing to have a position about it all. The master player learns to hold their opinions lightly. They might have preferences, but they don't cling to them. They can enjoy their favorite food without being upset when it's not available. The moment you think you have it all figured out, life will throw you a curveball. The moment you get comfortable with your role, circumstances will invite you to play a different part. Instead of resisting these surprises, you can learn to welcome them. They keep the game interesting. Imagine playing chess with someone who always made the same moves, or watching a movie where you knew exactly what would happen next. How boring would that be? The surprises, the plot twists, the unexpected turns, these are what make life an adventure rather than a tedious routine. When you stop needing to control every detail, when you develop what we might call a taste for surprise, you begin to find life endlessly fascinating rather than constantly frustrating. Now, one of the most liberating discoveries you can make about this game is that there are no real mistakes, only experiences. What you call failures are just experiments that didn't work out as expected. What you call successes are experiments that exceeded your expectations. But they're all just data points in the grand experiment of being human. A child learning to walk doesn't call it failure when they fall down. We think we should be able to do everything perfectly on the first try. We think mistakes are signs of inadequacy rather than natural parts of the learning process. We turn every stumble into evidence that we're somehow deficient. What if you could approach your whole life with the same attitude that child has toward learning to walk? What if every mistake was just information? Every failure, just feedback? How much lighter would you feel if you weren't carrying around all that self-judgment about your imperfect performance? Here's something else about this game that might surprise you. The best players are often the ones who appear to be playing the least. They move through life with a kind of effortless ease, not because they don't care, but because they've learned to work with the natural flow rather than against it. It's like the difference between swimming upstream and floating downstream. Both require skill, but one is exhausting while the other is energizing. When you understand the currents of life, when you learn to read the patterns of existence, you can accomplish much more with much less effort. This doesn't mean being lazy or passive. It means being intelligent about when to act and when to wait, when to push and when to yield. It means developing what the Chinese call wu wei, which is often translated as non-action, but really means action that is perfectly appropriate to the situation, like water flowing around rocks in a stream. Water doesn't try to fight the rock. It simply flows around it, and in doing so, it gradually wears the rock away. This is the power of the gentle approach, the light touch. The skillful player who understands that force is rarely the answer to life's challenges. Another crucial aspect of mastering this game is learning to play multiple roles simultaneously, without getting confused about which is which. Abunabhausen and Unbridgeable. You hear of a point of masteral, and from vocabble of the Psalms is Tilasa. Each role has its own requirements, its own costume, its own way of being. The skillful player can move fluidly between these roles without losing their center. They can be tough in business negotiations and tender with their children. They can be a student in one context and a teacher in another. They don't get stuck in any single identity. Most people make the mistake of trying to be the same person in every situation. They think authenticity means never changing, never adapting. But real authenticity is being appropriate to each moment, each relationship, each context. It's like being a skilled actor who can play many parts convincingly because they understand the deeper truth that connects all roles. Now let me tell you about one of the most profound discoveries you can make about this game. The rules are not fixed. They can change, and often do, based on how you choose to play. This is where the game becomes truly magical. Most games have rigid rules that everyone must follow. But the game of life is more like a collaborative improvisation where the rules evolve as you play. Your choices, your attitudes, your ways of being actually influence how the game unfolds for you. If you approach life with fear and suspicion, you tend to encounter situations that confirm your fears. If you approach it with curiosity and openness, you tend to find opportunities and adventures. If you play the role of the victim, you'll find plenty of people willing to play the villain. If you play the role of the hero, you'll discover your own capacity for courage and creativity. This isn't just positive thinking or wishful fantasy. It's recognition that consciousness is not passive. It's not just observing reality. It's participating in its creation. Your awareness, your attention, your choices are all active ingredients in the unfolding of your experience. Here's one of the most beautiful aspects of the game. Everyone gets to win, but not in the way we usually think of winning. The usual idea of winning involves someone else losing. But in this cosmic game, your victory doesn't require anyone else's defeat. In fact, the more skillfully you play, the more you help everyone else play skillfully too. When you're truly happy, you don't make others miserable. You inspire them to find their own happiness. When you're genuinely peaceful, you don't create conflict. You help others discover their own peace. When you're authentically yourself, you don't diminish others. You encourage them to be authentically themselves. This is why the masters, the really skillful players, often seem to be playing an entirely different game from everyone else. They're not competing. They're not trying to prove anything. They're not keeping score. They're simply playing for the pure joy of playing. And somehow, everyone around them starts playing better too. Let me share one final rule, perhaps the most important one. The game never actually ends. What you call death is just changing costumes, changing roles, changing the scenery. The player, the real you, the awareness that has been watching this whole performance that continues. When you truly understand this, it changes everything. You stop being so desperate to cling to your current role. You stop being so terrified of change. You realize that you are not just playing in the game. You are the game, playing itself, exploring infinite possibilities through countless characters and stories. And so here we are, at the end of our little exploration together, though of course there is no real end, just as there was no real beginning. There is only this eternal now, this endless game, this magnificent play of consciousness discovering itself through every possible form and experience. The next time you find yourself taking life too seriously, remember what I've told you today. You are not a struggling individual trying to survive in a hostile universe. You are the universe itself, playing at being an individual, exploring what it's like to apparently struggle, apparently succeed, apparently fail, apparently win. It's all play. It's all dancing. It's all music. And you are both the composer who only have sung the dance around the divan. Play skillfully. Play joyfully. Play with that light touch that comes from knowing it's all one magnificent cosmic game. And remember, in this game, everyone gets to be the winner. Because everyone is you, and you are everyone, and we're all just the one consciousness, playing at being many. The game never ends. It only changes form. And what a delightful game it is. In a very peculiar trap. We are convinced that life is a journey, a pilgrimage, with a serious purpose at the end. And the goal is to get to that end successfully, meaning with a certain sense of virtue, of accomplishment, to have achieved something, to have left our mark. But what if the entire affair is rather more like a piece of music or a dance? The meaning of a symphony is not contained in its final chord. The meaning of the dance is not to get to a particular spot on the floor. The meaning of it all is in the playing itself, in the dancing itself. So the question I'd like to explore with you is this. What happens when we stop taking this musical, dancing, swirling, star-like existence so dreadfully seriously? You know, we have this immense burden. We walk around with a constant low-grade anxiety that we are not doing it right, that we are not living properly. We are forever preparing to live. We think, I must get through school to get a good job. I must get a good job to have a secure life. I must have a secure life to raise a family. I must raise a family so they can get through school to get a good job. It's an endless cycle of purpose, where the purpose is always elsewhere. It's never right here. It's never now. We are like people reading a novel who are only interested in getting to the last page. And so we skim. We turn the pages frantically, missing all the poetry, all the drama, all the lovely descriptions, just to see how it turns out. And then when we get there, we close the book and say, is that all? And the whole point of the book was in the reading, in the living through it. We are missing the show because we are too busy looking for the meaning behind the show. We are like a person at a concert who does not listen to the music, but instead reads the score, checking for mistakes. The music is playing all around him, and he is missing the entire point. This is what happens when life becomes a problem to be solved, rather than a reality to be experienced. We build up this enormous structure of seriousness. We have to have the right credentials. We have to have the right job title. We have to have the right kind of car, the right address. We have to be seen with the right people. It's a colossal act, a performance, and we are terrified that the audience will see through the cracks, that they will see we are just making it up as we go along. And of course we are. Everyone is. The secret that nobody ever admits is that nobody really knows what's going on. We're all just playing roles. The doctor, the lawyer, the businessman, the mother, the father. They are roles, they are games. And games are fun, so long as you don't confuse the game with your fundamental reality. The problem arises when you forget you are playing, when you think you are your role, that you are the mask. Then the game becomes a prison. It becomes serious, and you have to defend it. You have to prove you are a good, serious, upstanding, purposeful person. But what is the alternative to all this seriousness? It seems frightening. If I am not serious, if I don't have a purpose, then what am I? I become a nothing, a washout, a failure in the eyes of the world. But this is where we have a profound misunderstanding. We think the opposite of seriousness is frivolity, shallowness, a kind of irresponsible laughter. But that's not it at all. The true opposite of taking life seriously is to see it as play, to see the universe itself as fundamentally playful. Look at nature. Does it look serious to you? Look at a kitten chasing its tail. Look at waves lapping against the shore. Look at the patterns of migrating birds in the sky. Do they look like they are on a grim mission? Do the clouds look like they are filled with existential dread? No, they are simply playing. They are expressing themselves. The universe is, at heart, a musical phenomenon. It is a dance of energy. And a dance has no destination. It is its own reason for being. We have this idea that everything in nature has a purpose. The bird sings to attract a mate. The flower is bright to attract a bee. The butterfly has eye spots to scare away predators. It's all an engineering project. But this is just us projecting our own purpose-driven anxiety onto the world. Why does the bird really sing? Why does the wave really break on the shore? Why does the star really shine? Is it not perhaps for the same reason a child sings or skips, for the sheer joy of expression, for the fun of it? We say the bird sings for a purpose, to survive. But I must ask, why survive? What is that for? To sing more songs, to have more babies who will sing more songs. You see, it becomes a circular argument. It's like saying the purpose of music is to get to the end of the composition. It misses the point entirely. The Chinese have a wonderful concept. Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting without straining, without forcing. It is the way of water, which wears away the hardest rock by yielding. It does not strive. It simply flows. And in that flowing, it accomplishes everything. And they have another word for this attitude towards nature: purposelessness. Now, to our Western ears, that is a terrible insult. Purposeless? That's useless. That's a waste of time. But to the Chinese mind, it is the highest compliment. They look at nature and see it as purposeless. The mountains just are. The rivers just flow. They aren't going anywhere. They aren't achieving anything. They are simply expressing their own nature. And in that, they are profoundly beautiful, profound and trustworthy. We think trust means believing that nature will always give us what we want, that it will be safe and comfortable. But that's not trust. That is a demand. Real trust is like the trust you have when you throw a ball. You let go of it. You have faith in the process. You don't hold on to the ball and run to the other person and carefully place it in their hand. You throw it, you let it fly. Life requires that same kind of trust. It requires you to let go, to stop trying to hold everything so tightly, to stop trying to control every outcome. If you do not have this trust, if you do not trust nature, and by nature I mean both the world outside you and your own inner nature, what is the alternative? The alternative is what we have created. It is a world of total mistrust. It is a world where we feel nature has got to be watched. It has got to be controlled. We can't trust our own instincts, our own desires, our own emotions. They are too dangerous. They are too messy. So what do? We create authorities to manage it all. We create rules, laws, systems, bureaucracies. We create a world where the most important thing is not the living of life, but the recording of it. It is more important that your files are in order than that you are a kind person. It is more important that the university's records are perfect than that its library is full of inspiring books. We are so busy measuring life that we forget to live it. We become our own jailers. We are so afraid of making a mistake, of looking foolish, of not being serious enough, that we fence ourselves in. We create a life that is, as they say, all jail and no prisoner, a structure with nothing alive inside it. But life is inherently messy. It is inherently playful. It is inherently spontaneous. You cannot schedule a moment of awe. You cannot program a belly laugh. You cannot force a genuine insight. These things happen when you let go. They happen when you stop taking yourself so seriously. A true scholar, in the original sense, is not someone who studies to get a degree. The word scholar means leisure. A scholar was a person of leisure who studied things not because they were useful, but because they were fascinating, because they were delightful. They studied the charming irrelevances of life, the things that do not contribute directly to survival, but that make survival worthwhile. Poetry, art, music, philosophy, the patterns of stars, the shapes of shells, this is play. And if you do not have room in your life for the playful, life is not worth living. But, and this is a very important but, if the only reason you play is because it is good for you, because it helps you work better afterwards, then you are not really playing at all. You are just working in a different form. You must learn to do things that have no purpose. Pick up a pebble. Look at it. Don't try to get a sermon out of it. Don't try to make it mean something. Just enjoy its texture, its color, its shape. Just enjoy it. Do not feel you have to justify the moment by saying it advances your aesthetic understanding. Just enjoy the pebble. When you can do that, you become, strangely, a healthy human being. You become able to be a loving, helpful person. But if you can only do things because you are going to get something out of it, you are what I would call a vulture. You are circling over life, waiting to profit from it, instead of landing and joining the dance. So, The first step is to see the incredible weight of seriousness we carry, to see the structure of purpose we have built around ourselves, like a shell, and to begin to wonder, what if we could set it down, just for a moment? What if we could, as the Chinese say, learn purposelessness? What would that feel like? It would feel like the moment you stop striving and simply listen to the rain. It would feel like watching wild geese fly and be hidden in the clouds. It would feel like watching a ship vanish behind a distant island. It would feel like wandering on and on in a great forest with no thought of return. Haven't you ever done that? Haven't you ever just gone for a walk with no particular place to go? You twiddle your thumbs. You hit a stick against a stump. You are, in that moment, a perfectly rational human being. You have learned the great art of purposelessness. And in that space, life stops being a problem. It becomes a song. And you begin to hear the music that has been playing all along. But this is only the beginning. We have seen the weight. Now we must look at the dancer. We must look at this you that is trying so hard to be serious. What is it? Where did it come from? And is it perhaps also part of the game? So we find ourselves carrying this immense weight. We are playing a role, and we have forgotten that it is a role. We have become convinced that the mask is our true face, that the part we play, the banker, the mother, the student, the failure, the success, is who we are fundamentally. But this you that you take so seriously, this ego, this personality, what is it? Where did it come from? If you look for it, it's rather elusive. It's a collection of memories, a bundle of desires and fears, a certain pattern of behavior. It's a story you tell yourself and others about who you are. I am a person who likes this and dislikes that. I am someone who did this and failed to do that. It is a concept, a thought. And like all thoughts, it is fleeting. It has no solidity. You cannot locate it in the body. Is it in the head, the heart? The brain is an instrument, a fantastic computer, but it is not the operator. The eye cannot see itself. The tooth cannot bite itself. The thinker cannot think itself. This you is a vibration, a pattern, a whirlpool in the stream of life. A whirlpool is a recognizable pattern. You can say, there is the whirlpool, but if you try to grab it, to take it out of the river, you get nothing but a handful of water. The whirlpool is something the river is doing. It is an activity, not a thing. In the same way, what you call me is something the universe is doing, right here and right now. It is a temporary dancing pattern, a gesture, and like a gesture in the air, it is fundamentally empty. It leaves no trace. Now, this can sound frightening. The idea that I am not a solid, enduring thing can feel like annihilation. But is it? Or is it the discovery of your true, vast nature? You are not the whirlpool. You are the whole river. You are not the wave. You are the ocean. We are all actors in this fantastic divine play. And the problem is not that we are acting. The problem is that we are bad actors. We are method actors. We have gotten so absorbed in the part that we've forgotten the curtain will fall. We've forgotten the audience. We've even forgotten that there are other actors on the stage, and we think our role is the only important one. A good actor knows he is acting. He can play the part of a king with tremendous conviction. But when he walks off the stage, he takes off the crown and has a beer. He doesn't go home and order his family about because he was a king on stage. He knows it was a game. The whole of life has a similar nature. It is a drama. It is a play of energy. And when you know that, you can play your part with immense verve, with passion, with compassion, with everything you have. But you won't be deceived. You won't take the tragedies backstage. You won't cling to the triumphs as if they were your permanent identity. You see, when you don't take your ego so seriously, a wonderful thing happens. You begin to relax. The constant low-grade anxiety of having to protect this fragile fictional self begins to dissolve. You can afford to be more spontaneous. You can afford to be foolish. You can afford to make mistakes. Because it's all part of the play. A wave in the ocean is not anxious about crashing on the shore. It's what waves do. It's part of the rhythm. It will gather itself again. In the same way, your successes and failures are just part of the rhythm of your expression. They are not the final judgment on you, because there is no you to be judged in that solid, fixed way. There is only the dancing, the flowing. This is why the Chinese sages praised purposelessness. They saw that nature is not going anywhere. It is just expressing itself. A tree does not purpose to grow. It grows because it is a tree. A bird does not purpose to sing. It sings because it is a bird. We are the same. Our purpose is not some distant goal. Our purpose is to express what we are right now. And what are we? We are the universe. We are nature. We are that same energy that blows out the stars, that shapes the galaxies, that curls the waves. You are not a stranger in a foreign universe. You are this universe, and it is you. So, how do you live this? How do you stop taking the mask so seriously? You don't do anything. That's the great joke. You cannot try to be spontaneous. You cannot make an effort to be effortless. That is like trying to bite your own teeth. Or like a person hearing a funny joke and then stopping to think, I must laugh now to show I understand. The real laugh comes from nowhere. It happens to you. When this realization dawns, life ceases to be a problem. It becomes a game, a very serious game, sometimes. A tragic game, sometimes. But a game nonetheless, and you can play a serious game without taking it seriously. A good chess player is utterly absorbed in the game. He cares deeply, but he does not think. The fate of the universe rests on whether he wins or loses. He knows it's chess, so you can go about your life. You can do your job, raise your family, pay your bills, but you do it with a lightness. You do it as an expression, not as a means of validation. You work not because you have to prove you are a worthy person, but because the work is there to be done, like a mountain is there to be climbed. This is what is called working for the work's sake, singing for the song's sake. It is action without attachment. You pour yourself completely into the moment, and then you let it go. You don't cling to the result. A cat does not pursue a mouse because it has a philosophy of predation. It does it because it is a cat. It is totally absorbed in the pursuit. It is a perfect expression of cattiness. And when the moment is over, it is over. The cat stretches and goes to sleep. It doesn't lie awake wondering if it was a good cat, or if it could have caught the mouse more efficiently. It is simply itself. We can learn from that. We can learn to be simply ourselves. Not the idea of ourselves, but the living, breathing, immediate reality of ourselves. When you are no longer defending a fragile self-image, you become incredibly strong. Criticism doesn't shatter you. Failure doesn't define you. Success doesn't inflate you. You can flow with circumstances. You can adapt. You can be like water, which is soft and yielding, yet which can eventually wear away the hardest rock. This is not passivity. This is supreme intelligence. It is action that is in accord with the total situation, not just with your narrow, selfish desire. It is the action of the whole universe expressing itself through you. So you see, the answer to the burden of seriousness is not to become frivolous. It is to become playful. To see the cosmos as it is, a joyous, spontaneous, and yes, sometimes painful dance. And to see yourself not as a lonely dancer, but as the dance itself. But the dance has a rhythm. It has a certain pattern. And to understand that pattern is to understand the deepest joke of all. Now, having seen the weight of our self-constructed seriousness, and having glimpsed the illusion of the separate solitary ego, we are left with a question. Not a question to be answered, but an invitation. An invitation to participate. What is left when you are not busy building a monument to yourself? What remains when the constant narration in your head The commentary, the judgment, the planning begins to quiet down. What remains is the experience itself, the raw, unfiltered isness of things, the feeling of the wind on your skin, the sound of a distant bird, the coolness of water. This is not a trivial reality. This is the fundamental reality. The world is not something you have to figure out. It is something to be tasted, touched, heard, and seen. You are not a passenger in the universe being taken for a ride. You are the universe experiencing itself. The eyes you look out of are not your personal possession. They are the eyes of life itself, looking out at its own creation. The energy that animates your body is the same energy that spins the galaxies. This is not a mystical fantasy. This is the most practical thing in the world. When you know this, not just as an idea, but as a feeling in your bones, your relationship with everything changes. You begin to see that life is not a journey with a destination. It is a musical thing. You are here to sing, to dance, to play. But we have been taught that playing is frivolous, that it is only for children. But I ask you, what is the alternative? All work and no play does not just make Jack a dull boy. It makes him a nervous wreck. It makes him a tyrant. It makes him a machine. The alternative is to join the dance, to understand that your very existence is your justification. You do not need permission to be. You do not need to earn the right to be here. You are here because you are here, just as a rose is red because it is a rose. So how does one live this way? You don't try. Trying is the energy of the separate ego, the energy of seriousness. You simply begin to notice. You notice the moments when you are already not trying. The moment you are captivated by a piece of music and forget yourself. The moment you are so absorbed in a conversation that time stops. The moment you are walking in nature and your endless internal chatter simply ceases. In those moments, you are there. You are fully present. And in that presence, there is no problem. There is only the dance. The goal is not to make those moments happen. The goal is to notice that they are always available, because the dance is always happening. Your very breathing is part of it. Your heartbeat is the drumbeat. This is the great liberation. To understand that you are already free. You are already what you are seeking. You are not going to become happy, peaceful, or enlightened at some future date. You can only be those things now. Any effort to become something is a rejection of what you already are, which is the energy of the cosmos. This does not mean you become passive. Quite the opposite. When you are not wasting energy defending an idea of yourself, you have immense energy available for life. You can act with tremendous efficiency and compassion, because your action is not about you. It is about the situation itself. It is the universe responding to itself. You become like the Zen archer, who does not shoot the arrow. It shoots. There is no arrogant archer separate from the bow, the arrow, and the target. There is only the one event, the shooting. This is action without strain. This is wu-wei. And so the call to action is not a call to do something new. It is a call to see something you have been overlooking. It is a call to trust. To trust yourself. To trust your own nature. And the nature of which you are a part. Yes, this is a risk. Life will sometimes let you down with a wallop. But the alternative, the life of total mistrust, of control, of constant surveillance of yourself and the world, that is not a life at all. That is a prison of your own making. The call is to let go. To join the dance that has been going on for billions of years. To sing the song that is already singing itself through you. You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. You are under no obligation to be serious. You are under no obligation to justify your existence. Your only obligation, if there is one, is to be true to the deepest truth of your being, that you are a unique, irreplaceable, and temporary expression of the whole universe. And the universe is not serious. It is playful. It is joyful. It is a great cosmic game of hide and seek, where it is both the hider and the seeker. So, go on, play, experiment, be foolish, be magnificent, Fail gloriously. Succeed lightly. Love. Lose. Feel it all. But whatever you do, don't miss the show by being too busy looking for the meaning behind it. The meaning is in the music. The meaning is in the dance. And you are the music. You are the dance.
You see, there is something very curious happening right now. Those who have begun to wake up, those who have started to see through the game, are quietly disappearing. Not with speeches or noise, but simply stepping back, no longer interested in the usual performance. If you felt this yourself, if ordinary conversations, social events, and small performances have started to feel unbearable, what I'm about to say may ease you. This isn't a disorder. It isn't antisocial behavior. It's what naturally happens when a person wakes up. By waking up, I don't mean reading a few books on philosophy or having a nice idea about oneness. I mean that moment when you suddenly notice that most of what people are doing is sleepwalking. They move around as if on automatic, playing roles they didn't choose, repeating lines they didn't write. And when you're asleep yourself, this doesn't seem strange at all. You blend in, you talk about nothing and think it matters. You care about other people's opinions and believe they're important. You chase things with no real substance and call it success. But when the veil drops, everything shifts. It's like walking out of a dark cinema into daylight. You can try to go back and enjoy the film, but you can't anymore because you know it's just a projection. You've seen the screen for what it is. That's what's happening to people who are waking up now. They find they can't keep participating in the collective dream, not because they think they're better than anyone else, but because their system simply can't accept what it once believed. Society runs on an agreement, a shared decision to pretend the characters we play are who we are, to pretend that the opinions we've absorbed are personal truths, to pretend that all this rushing and seriousness is actually leading somewhere important. The whole play only works if everyone stays in character. But when someone wakes up, they stop playing. They forget the script. They look directly at the stage itself. And this makes others uncomfortable, because the awakened can see beneath the surface. They see the fear behind the confidence, the emptiness behind the busyness, the fact that most arguments aren't about what people think they're about at all. And so they step away, not out of rejection, but because they can no longer pretend the game is real. When someone shouts their outrage into the public square, the awakened person doesn't see an enemy. They see unconscious material looking for somewhere to land. When society splits itself into us and them, the awakened person understands that both sides are simply projections colliding with each other. And once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending it's serious business. You can't take sides with the same heat and certainty as before, because you know it's all just a way of avoiding the mirror. So what does one do in that position? You withdraw. Not because you've stopped caring, not because you hate people, but because staying in the game demands that you deny what you've come to understand. Every conversation asks you to act as if you haven't seen what you've seen. Every social situation expects you to wear an older version of yourself, a mask that no longer fits. And after enough time, something in you refuses. It simply says, stop. Stop pretending. Stop shrinking yourself just to keep up the act. Go where you can actually breathe. And let's be clear, this is not about avoiding life. It's not spiritual bypassing. It's not running away from the world because it's too hard. It's something much simpler and far more honest. It's the recognition that staying in unconscious environments slowly harms consciousness itself. It's like putting a living plant in a dark room. It might survive for a while, but eventually it withers. Being surrounded by people who are asleep isn't just uncomfortable, it's draining. You spend an enormous amount of energy holding your center while everything around you pulls you off balance. You filter out projections, resist getting swept into emotional currents, and keep your awareness clear while others drift in fog. And no one sees the work you're doing because it's invisible, but it's real, and it costs you energy. Eventually, you realize you're spending all your strength just trying to stay awake in places that keep pulling you back to sleep. And that's when the choice appears. You choose consciousness over belonging, truth over approval, your own clarity over the comfort of being accepted by those who can't yet see what you see. That's when the disappearing begins. The first thing to go is the noise. Social media, for example, becomes unbearable because you can feel its nature. It's a machine built to keep people unconscious. Scrolling, judging, comparing, getting outraged, getting distracted. If you're awake, it's like standing in a river of sewage. So, you stop. You log out, you delete the apps, you stop feeding the machine. And without anyone noticing, hours of your life quietly return to you. Then you start leaving social circles, not with resentment, not with grand announcements. You simply stop showing up. Because you begin to see that most social spaces are stages. People are performing their lives, performing success, performing confidence, performing happiness, performing their opinions, and you can no longer play that part. Your real self has emerged, and it has no interest in putting on a mask. Then you leave certain relationships, not because you suddenly stopped caring about people, but because many of those bonds were built on a version of you that no longer exists. The sleeping version. Once you've woken up, you find there's no shared language anymore. You're no longer living in the same world. They're still speaking from inside the dream, and you're no longer in it. Then comes the career. That's often the hardest part. Because society has tied identity to work so tightly that leaving a job can feel like leaving yourself. But when you awaken, something changes. You can't play along with a system you can see through. You can't pretend to care about things that don't matter to you anymore. You can't sell your energy to roles that require you to stay unconscious. So, you leave. Sometimes suddenly, sometimes slowly, but you do leave. Because to stay would mean to slowly suffocate the very awareness you fought to bring into being. Now, here's the part most people misunderstand. They think disappearing from the noise means you'll end up isolated, lonely, depressed. But for someone who's awake, the opposite happens. In solitude, the loneliness ends. Because loneliness isn't about being without people, it's about being unseen among them. Aloneness is different. Aloneness is clarity. It's the space where you no longer have to twist yourself into a shape that fits. When the awakened person withdraws, they discover something most never realize. They were never truly with other people in the first place. Physical proximity is not connection. Real connection happens only when consciousness meets consciousness. And when you're awake in a room full of sleeping people, there's no one to meet. But in solitude, away from the noise and the endless performing, you finally meet yourself. Not the version you rehearsed for others, not the mask that was trained to fit into the world, but the living, breathing awareness behind all of that. And that isn't lonely, that is coming home. In that quiet space, you can finally hear your own thoughts without the static of 1,000 other voices. You can feel your own emotions without carrying everyone else's. You can discover what you actually want, what you actually believe, who you actually are. This is what I call the hermit phase. And it's not optional. It's essential. You cannot transform while clinging to every old connection and expectation. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly in the middle of a crowd. It withdraws, it cocoons, it goes silent for a while. And in the same way, awakening requires a period of retreat, not as escape, but as integration. This is when all the unconscious material you've carried for years finally has space to surface, to be seen and to be released. They are healing the damage that came from years of pretending to be someone they were not. They are gathering the strength to stand on their own ground, even when the rest of the world is still asleep. And this is no small task. It is much harder than staying unconscious. Because when you are awake, you lose the luxury of blame. You can no longer project your pain onto others. You can no longer hide from yourself in busyness, noise, or drama. Everything you've buried comes to the surface, and you must face it. No one can do that for you. But here's the strange, beautiful thing. Once you've walked through that darkness, once you've integrated what you've avoided, made peace with your shadow, and found what's real inside yourself, you stop depending on the world for your sense of reality. You stop needing approval. You stop begging for belonging. You no longer need the crowd to tell you who you are. You have something better. You found yourself. And from that place, if you choose to return to society, you return differently. Not to dive back into the noise, but to offer a quiet alternative. You become what I call a border dweller. Someone who stands with one foot in the sleeping world and one in the awakened. You are present, but not absorbed. Available, but not dependent. Engaged, but not entangled. Maybe you help those who are just beginning to stir. Maybe you create art that cuts through the surface and touches something real. Maybe you speak or write in ways that remind others of what they've forgotten. Or maybe you simply live your life so honestly that your very presence becomes a quiet question in the minds of others. Is there another way to be? But you never go back to the old game. You can't. Once you've tasted awareness, you can't return to sleep. Once you've felt your authentic self, you can't go back to performing a part. Once you've seen through the illusion, pretending becomes impossible. Now, some will say, isn't this selfish? Shouldn't we stay and try to wake everyone else up? Shouldn't we fight to fix the system from the inside? But here's the plain truth. You can't give what you don't have. If you haven't awakened fully yourself, if you haven't done the hard work of integrating your own shadow, then you're just another unconscious person trying to wake up other unconscious people. And that only spreads more confusion, no matter how noble your intentions. The most honest thing you can do for the world is to wake up yourself. Do the deep, uncomfortable work. Become genuinely conscious. And only then, from that steady ground, can you offer something real to those who are ready. And understand this. Most people aren't ready. Most don't want to wake up. They want the familiar dream, the roles, the comfort of the play. And that's their right. Your role is not to drag anyone out of their sleep. Your role is to wake up and to quietly make yourself available to those who are beginning to stir. That's why the awakened disappear, not out of bitterness or disdain, but because they need space to breathe. To live without having to constantly shrink themselves to make others comfortable. They find each other in quiet corners, in small circles, away from the stage. They build small pockets of sanity in a world still lost in its performance. And this isn't abandonment, it's responsibility. The world doesn't need more people reinforcing the dream. It needs people who've walked through it, woken up, and found something real. It needs living examples of authenticity. So if you feel the pull to disappear, if the noise, the games, and the performances no longer hold your attention, if you can no longer find yourself in the crowd, then listen to that pull. That is not weakness. That is your soul asking for space to grow. Do not resist it. Do not feel guilty. Do not force yourself to stay where you no longer belong. Withdraw. Rest. Be alone without apology. This is not permanent. You will return, but when you do, you won't be the same. You will return whole, clear, real. Someone who can offer consciousness instead of more performance. Use that solitude wisely. Do the work. Face your own darkness. Find what's real inside you. Because what the world actually needs is not more noise, not more preaching, not more performance, but people who have actually awakened. The spiritually awake are disappearing because they must. Because consciousness cannot deepen in places built to keep people asleep. Because authenticity cannot survive in constant performance. Because truth can't be found in collective lies. So if you are one of them, let yourself go. Withdraw without shame. Disappear without apology. Stand alone without feeling alone. Trust that this is an old pattern, older than any religion or philosophy. The way every human being who has ever awakened has walked. The caterpillar must dissolve before it can fly. The seed must break before it becomes the tree. And the awakened person must step away from the crowd before they can offer something real to it. This is not the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of consciousness that isn't borrowed from anyone else. The beginning of life lived from the center rather than from the script. And though the world may not understand it yet, it will. When it begins to stir, and when it does, people like you will already be there. Not as saviors, not as saints, but as quiet beacons. Pioneers. Carriers of something real. And that is enough.
You see, there's something rather peculiar that happens when you begin to wake up. When you stop playing the game quite so seriously. When you see through the great cosmic joke of it all. You become, how shall I put it, inconvenient. You become an irritation to those who are still fast asleep, still clutching desperately to their roles, their masks, their carefully constructed sense of who they think they are. It's not that you're trying to bother anyone. Quite the opposite. You're simply being. You're breathing. You're walking through life with a certain lightness, a certain freedom. But that very freedom, that very peace you carry, it disturbs something in others. It rattles their cages. And they don't even know why. Have you noticed this? You walk into a room, perfectly calm, perfectly friendly, and someone looks at you as if you've just insulted their entire family. You haven't said a word. You haven't done anything wrong. But your very presence seems to set off some invisible alarm in their nervous system. What's happening here? Why does your peace make them so uncomfortable? Why does your refusal to play the social games cause such strange reactions? Well, let me tell you what's really going on. When you awaken, when you see through the illusion of the separate self, when you stop identifying with the ego and all its desperate demands, you become a mirror. And mirrors, as you know, can be terribly uncomfortable things. They show people what they don't want to see. Not because you're judging them, not because you're trying to make them feel bad, but simply because you exist in a different way now. You're not playing by the old rules. And that makes the ego in others very, very nervous. So let's talk about the 5 ways people's egos will react to your awakening. Not so you can feel superior, mind you. That would just be your own ego sneaking back in through the side door. But so you can understand what's happening. So you can respond with compassion instead of confusion. So you can continue to walk your path without being thrown off by these reactions. When you stop defending yourself, when you stop justifying your choices, when you simply say no without a paragraph of reasons, something strange happens. People get upset. They demand explanations. They want you to prove that you have a good reason for living the way you live. You see, the ego loves to judge. It loves to evaluate, to measure, to determine whether someone else's choices meet its approval. And when you refuse to play this game, when you don't offer your life up for inspection, the ego feels robbed. It feels as though you're being rude, unfair, even arrogant. But here's the thing. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your existence. You don't need permission to be. You don't have to justify your peace, your choices, your way of moving through the world. When you're asleep, you probably spent enormous amounts of energy trying to make others understand you, trying to prove that you were living correctly. But now you've seen through that trap. You've realized that no amount of explaining will satisfy the ego's hunger for control. So what happens? People get irritated. They accuse you of thinking you're better than them. They say you've become distant, cold, difficult to reach. But you haven't changed in the way they think. You simply stopped performing. You stopped auditioning for a role in their drama. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to argue about it. You don't need to defend your refusal to defend yourself. You simply smile, perhaps, and go about your business, like water flowing around a rock. The rock can complain all it wants, but the water just keeps flowing. Number 2, they will test you to see if you're real. This is a curious one. When people sense that you've found something, some kind of peace or clarity they haven't found, they often can't resist testing it. It's like when you tell someone you're not bothered by something, and they immediately try to bother you about that very thing. They poke, they prod, they say things designed to get a reaction. Why do they do this? Because the ego in them wants to prove that you're just pretending. It wants to show that underneath your calm exterior, you're just as anxious, just as reactive, just as trapped as they are. If they can get you to break, to lose your composure, to snake back at them, then they can dismiss what you represent. They can go back to sleep feeling justified. You might find people bringing up old arguments, mentioning things they know used to upset you, creating situations designed to push your buttons. A colleague at work might suddenly start criticizing everything you do. A family member might bring up that one topic they know always started fights. A friend might make comments about how you've changed, how you're not fun anymore, how you take yourself too seriously, or not seriously enough. And here's what's marvelous about this. If you react, if you get defensive or angry or upset, their ego wins. It gets to say, see, I knew it, you're not really at peace, you're just putting on an act. But if you don't react, if you remain calm and present, their ego gets even more irritated. Because now it can't dismiss you. Now it has to face the possibility that what you have might be real. So what do? You let them test. You let them poke and prod, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you genuinely aren't bothered anymore. You've seen through the dream. You know that their testing is just their own fear speaking, their own ego trying to protect itself from the possibility of change. Number 3, they will gossip and create stories about you. When you stop participating in the constant drama of social life, when you stop gossiping, stop complaining, stop playing the games of alliance and betrayal, something interesting happens. You become a subject of gossip yourself. People will create stories about you. They'll say you think you're better than everyone else. They'll say you've become strange, disconnected, too spiritual, not grounded. They'll wonder what's wrong with you, what happened to make you so different. And they'll discuss all of this behind your back, weaving theories and explanations for your behavior. Why does this happen? Because the ego needs to make sense of things. When someone steps outside the usual patterns, the ego in others becomes uncomfortable. It needs to categorize, to label, to put you in a box it can understand. And if it can't find a box that fits, it will create one. Usually a box that makes you seem flawed, or foolish, or misguided in some way. You might hear through others that people are saying you've had some kind of breakdown, or that you're going through a phase, or that you've joined some weird spiritual cult. The stories will vary, but they'll all have one thing in common. They'll all be attempts to explain away what's happening with you in a way that protects their own worldview. And here's the thing. You cannot stop this. You cannot control what others say about you. If you try, if you go around defending yourself, correcting the stories, setting the record straight, you'll exhaust yourself. You'll be pulled right back into the drama you've been trying to step away from. The awakened response is to let them talk. Let them create their stories. Let them gossip and theorize and worry about you if they want to. Their stories have nothing to do with you anyway. Their stories about their own fears, their own resistance to change, their own unwillingness to question the game they're playing. As they say, what others think of you is none of your business. And it really isn't. You are not the character in their story. You are simply you, walking your path, being present, living with awareness. The rest is just noise. Number 4. They will try to pull you back into old patterns. This one can be particularly tricky, especially with people you've known for a long time. Family members, old friends, people who knew you before you woke up. They remember the old you. The you who played the games, who got upset about the things they got upset about, who participated in all the usual dramas. And now you've changed. You don't react the same way. You don't get pulled into the same arguments. You don't play your old role in the family dynamic or the social group. And this makes them uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. So what do? They try to pull you back. They'll bring up old memories, trying to remind you of who you used to be. They'll invite you into old patterns of relating. They'll create situations where you're expected to play your old part. And if you don't, they'll express hurt or confusion or frustration. A mother might say, you used to tell me everything what happened. A friend might complain that you're not the same person anymore, that you've lost your sense of humor, that you're no fun. A sibling might accuse you of thinking you're too good for the family now. It suggests that maybe others could change too. And that's a frightening thought for the ego. Change means uncertainty. Change means the comfortable patterns might not hold. So they resist your transformation by trying to make you the same person you used to be, but you can't go back. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't. Once you've seen through the illusion, once you've tasted real freedom, the old ways of being feel like costumes that no longer fit. You can love these people. You can be kind to them. You can spend time with them. But you cannot pretend to be someone you're not anymore just to make them comfortable. So what do? You remain present. You remain loving. But you don't take the bait. When they try to pull you into an old argument, you don't argue. When they try to make you feel guilty for changing, you don't defend yourself. You simply are who you are now, and you trust that either they'll adjust to this new way of relating, or they won't. And either way, you continue on your path. Number 5. They will feel uncomfortable in your presence. This is perhaps the most subtle and the most powerful reaction. When you've awakened, when you're no longer identified with the ego and all its games, your very presence becomes uncomfortable for those who are still deeply asleep. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's not that you're judging them or looking down on them or trying to make them feel bad. In fact, you might be more tamed, more present, more genuinely interested in them than you ever were before, but something about your energy, your way of being, makes them squirm. Why? Because consciousness is contagious. When you're present, when you're not caught up in the constant chatter of the mind, when you're simply being, it creates a space of stillness, a space of awareness. And in that space, other people's ego chatter becomes suddenly very loud to them. They become aware, even if just slightly, of the noise in their own heads. They become aware of their own anxiety, their own restlessness, their own constant need to be somewhere else, doing something else, being someone else. Your peace mirrors their chaos. Your stillness reflects their agitation. And instead of using this as an opportunity to question their own way of being, the ego's first instinct is to blame you for making them uncomfortable. It's your fault they feel this way. You're too serious. You're too calm. You're too quiet. Something must be wrong with you if you're not as anxious and busy and worried as they are. You might notice people don't want to sit with you in silence. They fill every gap with chatter. They ask you what you're thinking, what's wrong, why you're so quiet. They interpret your presence as judgment when it's simply presence. They project onto you their own discomfort with stillness, with silence, with simply being. And here's the beautiful paradox. The very thing that makes them uncomfortable, your awakened presence, is exactly what they need. Your stillness invites them to be still. Your peace offers them the possibility of peace. Your freedom shows them that freedom is possible. But the ego resists this invitation with everything it has, because accepting it means death to the ego. It means letting go of all the games, all the stories, all the desperate attempts to prove its existence. So some people will simply avoid you. They'll make excuses not to spend time with you. They'll drift away from your life. And that's okay. You cannot force anyone to wake up. You cannot drag them into awareness. All you can do is be who you are and trust that those who are ready will be drawn to what you represent. Others might accuse you of being judgmental, even though you're not judging them at all. They feel judged simply by being in the presence of someone who's not playing the game anymore. Your very existence questions their choices, even though you're not saying a word about their choices. This is projection. They judge themselves and then project that judgment onto you. The awakened response is compassion, because you remember what it was like to be asleep. You remember the constant anxiety, the need to defend yourself, the exhausting game of trying to be somebody. You remember how uncomfortable it was to be around anyone who seemed to have found something you were still desperately seeking. So you don't take their discomfort personally. You don't make it mean anything about you. You simply continue to be present, to be kind, to be available if they want to talk, or be silent together. Now here's what's important to understand about all five of these reactions. They are not about you. They're about the other person's relationship with their own ego. When you awaken, you become a mirror. And what people see in that mirror is not you, it's themselves. They see their own fears, their own resistance, their own attachment to the game they're playing. Some will look in the mirror and feel inspired. They'll want to know what you've found. They'll ask questions. They'll be curious about this peace you seem to carry. These are the ones who are ready, who are beginning to wake up themselves. They recognize in you something they've been looking for, even if they don't know what to call it yet. But others will look in the mirror and feel threatened, and they'll react in one or more of the ways we've discussed. They'll demand explanations, test you, gossip about you, try to pull you back, or simply feel uncomfortable around you. And all of this is just the ego's way of protecting itself from the possibility of change. The woman who glares at you in the grocery store is not really seeing you. She's seeing her own discomfort reflected back at her. The colleague who constantly criticizes you is not really responding to what you do. He's responding to what your way of being says about his way of being. The family member who accuses you of thinking you're better than everyone is not really talking about you. They're talking about their own insecurity, their own fear of change. Second, you remain compassionate, because you know that being asleep is suffering. You know what it's like to be trapped in the ego's games, to feel that constant low-grade anxiety, to always be defending yourself against some imagined threat. So when people react to you in these ways, you see it for what it is. Cry for help. a desperate attempt to maintain the only sense of self they know. Third, you don't dim your light to make others comfortable. This is crucial. You might be tempted, out of kindness, to go back to playing some of the old games, to pretend you're still asleep, just to fit in, just to avoid making waves. But this doesn't serve anyone. Your light, your awakened presence, is a gift to the world, even when it makes people uncomfortable, especially when it makes people uncomfortable, because that discomfort is the first step toward questioning, toward waking up. Fourth, you trust the process. You understand that awakening is not something you can give to anyone else. They have to find it themselves. Your job is not to wake anyone up. Your job is simply to be awake yourself. And in being awake, in living from that place of presence and peace, you offer a possibility. You show that another way is available. What others do with that possibility is up to them. And fifth, you keep your sense of humor about the whole thing. 'Cause really, isn't it rather funny? The great cosmic joke of it all. Here we are, consciousness pretending to be separate individuals, egos fighting with other egos, all of us forgetting that we're the same thing, looking at itself through different eyes. When you see this, when you really get the joke, you can't help but laugh. Not at others, but with them. Because we're all in this ridiculous play together. You see, the irritation people feel is not a problem to be solved. It's part of the process. It's part of how awakening spreads. One person wakes up, and their presence creates ripples. Some people surf those ripples toward their own awakening. Others resist them, build walls against them, pretend they don't feel them. But the ripples continue. The presence continues. The light continues to shine. And here's the final secret. The more you stop caring about these reactions, the more effective your presence becomes. When you're trying to prove something, trying to convince others, trying to make them see, you're still caught in the ego game. But when you simply are, when you live your life with presence and peace without any agenda, without any need for others to understand or approve, that's when the real magic happens. Because then you're not playing the game at all. You're not trying to win. You're not defending yourself. You're not even trying to wake anyone up. You're just being. And being is the most powerful thing in the world. Being is what the ego cannot withstand. Being is what gradually dissolves all the games, all the stories, all the desperate attempts to be somebody special. So let them react. Let them demand explanations. Let them test you. Let them gossip. Let them try to pull you back. Let them feel uncomfortable. It's all part of the dance. It's all part of the play. And you just keep being present, aware, free. You walk through the world like water through rocks, like wind through trees, like light through darkness. Not forcing anything, not resisting anything. Simply flowing, simply being. And in that simple being, you offer the most powerful teaching of all. The teaching that has no words. The teaching that cannot be explained. The teaching that irritates every ego it encounters because it shows, without saying a word, that the emperor has no clothes. That the game we're all playing is just a game. That underneath all the roles and masks and stories, there is simply this. This presence, this awareness, this being. And that, my friends, is quite enough.